perspectives, different takes on it. On this book, the author. I'm not used to talking in front of people or talking a lot, so. But yeah, I'm definitely in the camp of Wendell Berry, and I think his prose is so beautiful. There's a lot of different reasons why I like him, and I'll explain on that later. The thought of like fleshing out or creating something original to discuss about this work, Wendell Berry in general, was just kind of daunting because I'm not a poet, I'm not a really writer or anything, just a dude. But I wanted to write something, but I experienced something. It was a long-expected loss that I experienced shortly after the announcement that Hannah Coulter was the book. We're going to go over it, and in processing through that, I noticed a lot of implicit parallels to what I was going through. I'm not going to try to unpack those or elaborate them and come up with anything analytical or eloquent or anything like that. I just want to share my story. You can take from that what you will. And yeah, just I'll get into it. Like I said, I love Wendell Berry's writing. I love his ethos and his philosophy on life. There's a lot of reasons why I love him, actually, but one of them is because he reminds me of my grandfather. Like Wendell Berry, grandfather's, he was born in the early 3rd century. Not 3rd century. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the third part of the early third portion of the 20th century, and this old white dude from Kentucky. Yeah. Let me just get to it. So, yeah, the resemblance to my grandfather. His name is Daniel Baldwin Sr., whose grandchildren and great-grandchildren affectionately called Poppy. 2 months ago, roughly half a year shy of his 100th birthday, he died. I love my Poppy, and I miss him, and I love him still. Like Wendell Berry, he was born in Kentucky in the first third of the 20th century. Over genealogies, he traced his ancestors' origins in the mountainous part of Kentucky to the Revolutionary War. He had deep, abiding conviction in the value of family, of faith, and of the importance of place defining oneself and one's community. Harlan County, called Bloody Harlan, due to revolts and insurrections and infighting, was a place marked by violence and oppression. A coal mining town, powerful, accrued wealth and comfort at the expense of the poor and disenfranchised. Although from humble beginnings, by with the Great Depression, Poppy married into a family whose patriarch was the local doctor and a partial owner of the local mine. He was a doctor who would tend to the sick children in the area in exchange for the family's mineral rights. That's an ugly heritage Poppy had to bear, that I bear. At 17, he was drafted to fight in World War II. Gentle boy sent to sacrifice his innocence at the altar of war. Commissioned to violence. He was spared by the annihilation of atoms and civilians in Hiroshima. After the war, he returned to Bloody Harlan and sought to serve his kin peacefully. Until his last days, he took pride in being the first Democrat elected to political office in the county. During that time, Poppy fell in love. He married a certain Eleanor Ruth Alice Buttermore, who would love him faithfully for 75 years, raised a family, but eventually settled in Florida. In spite of Bloody Harlan's cultural soil, Poppy was nothing if not kind. He had a gentle disposition, warm and welcoming to the most eccentric stranger. His kindness found an outlet in vocational rehabilitation for people with disabilities, especially for the hearing impaired and deaf. I never knew Poppy in those times and places. To me, he was always Poppy, ancient of days. His kindness, he taught me how to care for the needs of others before myself, to keep my word, my commitments, to love a tree, for ever pruning. He also demonstrated the steadfast pleasure that can be found in the written word. Even in the final years of his life, he would read daily and recite poetry. Through sad irony, he gradually lost his ability to hear. As that happened, the world around him continued to change. The people he admired and loved began to die. The shared history, values he once had in community eroded, and that erosion made him grow weary. From the time we moved away from Florida 25 years ago, I made a point of sitting with Poppy whenever I visit, at least once a year. During that time, he would share stories of his past, the people and places he loved, and of the hope he had in a reality beyond the bounds of this mortal frame. The conversations, especially towards the end, were increasingly one way. In truth, if he could hear me or the doubts and disagreements I had with his perspective on the world, I'm certain he would have felt a little more alienated. Nevertheless, while I failed to know the full measure of the man, and while he failed to understand me in full, ours was a deep, abiding love for one another. The funeral hit me hard. One of his favorite poems, A Song of Life, by Longfellow, contained the lines, "Life is real, life is earnest, the grave is not its goal." He died in the hope that this was not all there was to existence. Yet seeing his body in the casket, donning an unnatural visage, seemed to refute that assertion. Poppy, when last I saw him, was alive, tired and feeble, yes, but his shrunken eyes contained the ineffable spark that appears wholly other to the corporeal. Now, Poppy was not. Family and friends found some solace in remembering him. The weight of loss felt oppressive. At the turn of the past century, the Jesuit Society constructed a monument within walking distance of the site where Hernando de Soto first set foot on the North American continent. The monument was a 50-foot cross. For many, the cross symbolizes violence, oppression, a sign of dominance and systemic evil, hypocrisy, reflective of powerful people in Bloody Harlan and the world in general. But for Poppy, the cross was a sign of hope and love. Every morning, from the time that cross was erected until the time he could no longer make the trek, he'd wake up at 4 a.m., walk to the monument, he'd kneel, and he'd pray. In remembrance of him, the morning after the funeral, I woke up in darkness, made a pilgrimage to the cross. Parked my car at the Method trailhead and traversed the manicured path. As I walked, I wondered how De Soto's troops, the soon-to-be oppressors, felt as strangers in this wild land. I wondered how the indigenous people, the soon-to-be oppressed, felt when confronted for the first time by a people wholly other. I thought, this is what it is to be human. We stumble in the dark, in the path of our ancestors, hoping to see light.